editor for The Cradle, and I am joined by my colleagues, content creator and writer for The Cradle, Karim Shami, and columnist and editor for The Cradle, Sharmin Narwani. Thank you, everyone who is joining today, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are, for this roundup on a week that has been very intense with news. We're going to get into as many things as we can. We'd love to hear from you. So please, anything you want to listen to, let us know in the comments. This is a new step for The Cradle. This is as we try to grow, as we try to expand our coverage, and as we continue to ask for your support. As you know, now you can donate directly through YouTube. You can use super chats, stickers. You can subscribe, become a monthly subscriber of The Cradle, as you could before in our Patreon, which we also invite you to go check out as usual. And please help us out, help us continue to grow, help us continue to spread the truth at a time when the lies are spreading everywhere. How are you guys? How are you, Karim? How are you, Charmaine? Are you excited about this morning?
Yeah, I
I,
am.
I
I
am.
mean, I don't know this format, so I think I'm just curious to
This is
see
gonna
how
be
it goes down.
interesting.
I mean,
Yeah, it's
you
gonna.
always figure like very few people can come on live compared to people who can like bookmark a YouTube video they want to watch and then watch it later. I guess in this
Exactly.
format we
And we
have
also
both
welcome
options.
everybody who comes and watches later. You don't have to watch this live, but of course, we welcome everyone that is here now. So, why don't we just get right to it? The fallout of the ceasefire, of this, the 12-day war, as Trump called it, I'm pretty sure he's going to pop up soon enough with that, written on a cap, as he's wont to do. What is the feeling of what happened, right? Because during the actual announcement of the end of the Iran-Israel war, uh, well, the fog of war was very thick. There were many questions. Were they even going to agree? Remember, at the last minute, they were still launching attacks against each other, the Israelis, and then Trump, his infamous F-bomb, in which he was very upset, in particular at Israel, right? And the question looming over everything is, who won? Who won this war? And I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think?
Can you please open the show?
Yeah, I think nobody has like a complete victory, but of course, at the end, the upper hand was for Iran. They launched a deadly missile attack at the end, and of course, if we're talking about a war and who won, we have to see the objectives. The objectives of the Israelis were not fulfilled, and if partially they were fulfilled with the aid of the United States. Israel alone was
They couldn't
unable
do it.
to,
They
they
couldn't do it.
couldn't do it, and especially hala because maybe our viewers are English speakers. Morally and politically and in many ways Iran won a big time in the Arabian Straits. Usually I saw many people that usually they hate Iran. Now they are hating their governments and they are supporting Iran. Everybody saw what happened. Everybody in the region was like fed since they were born that Iran and the mullahs and whatever they call them are like Satans and they work with Israel against the Arab countries and blah blah blah. But what happened in only 12 days was able to change many people,
The narrative
and
collapsed entirely. It
yeah,
collapsed.
100%. And also, just now before we started this live episode, Khamenei had a speech, and in the speech he said that there were no significant damage to our nuclear program. And to be honest, I believe him.
But
What do you think, Charmaine?
I think instead of quoting from Khamenei, who's obviously going to um, cheer on the Iran side in this and spin it to advantage, just as the Americans are doing, it's almost more worthwhile to go to the belly of the beast, see what Americans and Israelis are saying about this. I mean, the Iranians are cheering on the streets, and the Israelis appear very downcast, just surveying damage minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. And of course, we're getting more videos of that out and shared on social media. So I think Israelis who are not in Tel Aviv are also reeling now from scenes they've not seen thus far. But I think Steve Bannon said it best. He said, and he's talking about the ceasefire day. Yesterday was a very tough day. This ceasefire was more about saving Israel. That's the hidden part of the story. They got into something beyond their capability. They went so far that they had nothing left in them. Yesterday was truly a terrifying day for the people of Israel. And I mean, I would agree with that. Just the cost of, in the US, so Steve Bannon's like a MAGA original, but as the Cradle has noted in its many podcasts and articles over the span of this war, and even before that, we were seeing a split in the Republicans, the U.S. conservatives. So the MAGA folks who cleaved to Trump's promise of no more wars, and then the Republican sort of deep state neocon types who were cheering on war. But I think what Bannon's alluding to is that Israel is relatively weak and it is in constant need of saving from the United States. I'm talking militarily, I'm talking about, money,
Economically.
economically, I'm talking about, US vetoes and
Mhm, mhm.
US maneuvers in international organizations, whether it's the ICC, the ICJ, the IAEA, the UN Security Council. And it's the idea is forming in I think in the US that Israel doesn't actually add to US security, but it becomes a
It's a
colossal burden, an
it's a
albatross.
drain. It's a huge drain. I wanna thank everyone in the comments we are reading. I'm reading them right now. Everyone's so nice. Everyone, we have a question. How is it having to work with such a beautiful face, such as Charmin? Karim is so cute. You guys, everybody
Now, I
loves us.
also see Esteban, you're so handsome, looking
Oh, guys,
very slick,
you're gonna make
Esteban.
me
Yeah,
blush live
it's
on
a
air.
political channel, guys.
Please,
Karim is
please, let's
so
keep it to
cute.
political comments. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We love the love. There's a question here from a viewer called Matt who thinks that he says, does Israel now, due to their missile defense stock depletion, forced to wait before engaging in any further aggression against Iran? And to this, I just want to add something. First of all, to what you were saying, Charmin, about the state of Israel being a huge drain to U.S. resources. We had heard during the war that the Israelis were looking for an off ramp because they were about to run out of the munitions, the interceptor missiles. And there was a very interesting report I read yesterday, and this is in particular to the US's Terminal High Altitude Area Defense missiles, the THAAD, the famous THAAD missiles, that apparently in this 12-day war, 39 THAAD interceptors were used, and that is nearly the full loadout of the launcher that was delivered to Israel, which is 48. And now, even more interesting, each of these interceptors cost $12.7 million. So you're talking in these 39, they cost almost $500 million in just a matter of days. Even more interesting, the US budget for next year says that only 32 THAAD interceptor missiles are going to be procured. In 12 days, in less than 12 days, the US wastes almost its entire, or more than its entire year's production of THAAD missiles. And also in their attack in the Fordow facility, in which Trump says we dropped the mother of all bombs, we dropped 14 of them.
They
Apparently,
only
before
have 20.
they only have 20. They only have 20. They wasted 70% of their stock of these, highly rare arsenal. And what did they achieve? Well, according to Trump and Hexet and Rubio and Vance, they destroyed everything. To Tulsi Gabbard, the same. But the word from the intelligence community is the complete opposite of that. So now, just quickly to go back to Matt's question, in which he says, does Iran now have to wait? Is Iran gonna? I'm sorry. Does Israel have to wait now? How long do you think Israel needs to wait to wage
Well,
war
if
again?
if the Ukraine war is any indication of resupply speed, uh, Israel's going to have to wait quite a bit. Iran is obviously a much faster producer and at much lower costs. Uh, Furthermore, I think we can see some are still arguing against this, but I think we can see that Iran is going to be able to depend on the Russians and Chinese as we all viewed the Iranian defense minister hightailed it to Beijing right after the so-called ceasefire, and many are speculating that Iran could be procuring um, fighter jets. Iran, by the way, we looked this up right before the show. Iran does have an indigenous fighter jet program, A lot of it is reverse engineered from like, I think US F5s that it had in its inventory before. And obviously advanced, they do have indigenous ones they're creating, but why not skip that whole thing and do an oil trade for jets from China? I mean, that's one thing about the speed at which both can rearm. Also, let's not forget that there's been, of Israel's three ports, one of them is completely out of commission, the one the south,
Haifa, right?
Eilat
Ah,
port by
Eilat,
the
there you go.
Yemenis earlier on. And then Haifa was also struck, and then we're left with Ashdod port. But the U.S. seems to be, air delivering weapons increasingly rather than using the much slower, shipping method to get weapons to Israel. We've seen this before in the 2006 war. I mean, the Israelis wanted to stop. They just were not getting, um, uh, what is it called? Um, they weren't
The
getting
results.
their replenishment
Ah,
of supplies in fast enough time. But to the cost of this war in Israel, and I'm like really reading this off a tweet, and I can't remember the guy's name, otherwise I would credit him. Um, Israel entered this war believing it could do this decapitation, believing that Iran was Hezbollah, a non-state actor that has restrictions based on the state it operates within. Iran has no such limitations, obviously. Israel entered this war thinking that it could absorb costs by doing a massive decapitation and confuse the Iranians with, you know, uh, thousands of drones operating that they had smuggled into Iran, operating within Iranian airspace, and give them the idea. The Americans and Israelis kept talking about Israeli air superiority. I don't believe that was ever the case during the entirety of this period. It was to confuse the Iranians who were getting bombed, but not sure where and how it was all happening. But the Iranians rallied very quickly, and the Israelis were not able to absorb the costs. Look at the ledger. The direct military cost to Israel hit $5 billion in the first week. And then every
Christ.
day thereafter was almost $1 billion, something like 725 million every 24 hours. It spent about 600 million on offensive strikes that failed to silence Iran. And I don't know what they mean by offensive strikes. Does that mean from Israeli fighter jets outside Iranian territory that shot missiles into Iran? Does it mean that their entire internal drone program in Iran, operations were cost $600 million? And then, again, hundreds of millions on missile intercepts that allowed 400 of Iran's supposed 550 ballistic missiles, projectiles through. Okay, so a massive loss on that front and a massive cost. The Iron Dome batteries alone cost up to $200 million per day, while Iranians, you know, erased about $1.5 billion in civilian property. And we know this from our own reporting at the Cradle that there are 38,700 damage claims inside Israel, 11,000, though I suspect that number is far higher, evacuations, and at least 30 high-rise skeletons across Tel Aviv's skyline.
Exactly.
And that's not even like the what Iran actually targeted, the setback to Israel's own military, operational, intelligence, security
Energy.
assets, right? Iran hit the Mossad, they hit the defense establishment, they hit their technology defense sector, they hit their oil refineries, I mean, I don't know at what point we're going to have a final tally for Israel's losses in this war, economically and militarily, but it's going to be a huge bill. And will the
Karim,
Americans and Trump especially want to shoulder that bill?
Karim, I want to ask you: do you think the losses that Israel suffered were they bigger militarily or bigger in the media? in the images of their.
It's absolutely about psychology because they know or they are taught that they are superiors to this region and they can do whatever they want. But what happened in 12 days is the opposite of what they are taught, and it's
And what
clear
we are
from.
all taught, because remember, this is like the global narrative.
Yeah, and if I am to be honest, and what happened first, they erased Gaza. They assassinated Sayyid Hassan, Bashar al-Assad flee, and nobody knows what happened. And suddenly, Al-Hashd, which is the Iraqi resistance, they have no voice, no actions, and we as people that are against this entity usually usually we rely on them, and suddenly the only actor that was like very active is the Yemenis,
Mhm.
and Iran also is left alone. So Israelis thought that they destroyed everything. Now the turn has come to Iran, and they didn't succeed. And we saw that the United States had to intervene to stop the war and to also inflict damages to to Iran's nuclear facilities, especially Fordo. And if you read both medias, and even يعني comments of ordinary people in Israel and Iran, you will feel it and you will see that the Israelis are very mad, and even there's many Israelis are calling to bomb even Washington, and people also are calling for another 9/11 in uh,
In
in
the US,
Washington
yeah.
and
We
New
have a
York.
post about this. I
Yeah, and in
invite
New
people to go
York,
see it. Mhm.
100%. So this will tell us what the people perspective is, and what the state media are saying also. I don't think the Israelis now can say that we made complete victory against Iran.
There's a question for
So
you here
yeah,
in the chat, Karim. They say, will the equation change if the Egyptians wake up?
the Egyptians.
The
Hala,
Egyptians.
there's only one Egyptian that have to wake up. It's Sisi. I don't think the Egyptians are very different than other Arab countries. I'm talking here because I follow the Arabic media, of course, and I speak Arabic. It's my native language. Usually, what we see from Egyptian famous people, yeah, for instance, people who act and who sing, and even like people that are in the media, they are completely different than the people of the Gulf countries. Usually, the Egyptians are very sharp, and they are against Israel. And in their media and their songs, they work against Israel, unlike their government. But on the other hand, when you go to countries such as Saudi Arabia, although they are not normalized, but you will see that the general public is not like as the Egyptians. You will see people defending the Israeli actions, and especially in the UAE and even in Kuwait, there are many people who are like who cheers when Sayyid Hassan was assassinated. They
Cheered
cheered
when,
when,
yeah.
yeah. So the Egyptians are really different. The Israelis were able to penetrate the high ranks of Egyptians since Sadat, but they failed until now to make the thoughts or to shift the thoughts of the Egyptian people.
I just to go back to, I mean, we had an analysis piece, I think it was yesterday, that explained why Arab countries are recalculating a lot of things. Um, Primarily, any scenario in which Iran could or should be beaten, the Arab nations, especially Persian Gulf nations, have realized in 12 days that Iran actually provided them with a security umbrella for decades because it kept Israel's most, ludicrous expansionist agendas away from Arab countries. And if Israel emerges victorious, uh, the um, goodbye Lebanon, goodbye Syria, goodbye Jordan, goodbye chunks of Iraq,
Mhm.
these and
Egypt.
goodbye Sinai.
Mhm.
These are part of Israel's expansionist goals, and so the Arab capitals have realized that actually Iran has been a very valuable buffer and obstacle to especially this right-wing Israeli government's expansionist goals. And we're clearly seeing the expansionism. So I think there will be a reassessment. I mean, of course, Western media just blared headlines about how Arab rulers were condemning Iran strikes on the Doha base, CENTCOM, U.S. CENTCOM's headquarters
But
in
sorry,
Qatar.
Sharmeen, please let's be civilized in the comments. Please, sorry, Sharmeen, continue.
Okay.
Go ahead, Charmaine. Actually, do you mind? Some people are saying your microphone is low. I don't know if it's because your hair is covering. I think maybe.
Is this better? Is this better? I don't know.
Maybe. Keep going.
Okay. So I think that's really important. I think there's a lot of recalculations and recalibrations that we're going to see in the months ahead. For sure, they understand that the U.S. cannot stop a war in this region. It only arms it. And I think you'll see a lot of Arab capitals now want to deal much more voraciously with Beijing and Moscow, because they understand that these guys who have relations with all Arab countries, like good relations, can mitigate and stave off further disasters by, helping arrange regional peace and security, um, either consortiums or treaties or pacts or understandings that the Americans will never do, kind of like how Beijing brokered the Iran Saudi reconciliation. But I want to go back to something I keep repeating on our main podcast, which is Israel has two legs. Okay. In this battle, I think Israel completely destroyed its second leg. So the two legs are, one, the fairy tales and myths and propaganda it spun. Israel is a David to the region's Goliath. Israel is a victim, Holocaust stuff. It's a tiny sliver of a nation compared to the big land masses of, that constitute Arab states. And the second leg that Israel stands on is Jews moving there, Zionists making aliyah, exactly. But in 2024, more than 80,000 Israelis emigrated, okay, which was the largest outflow of Zionist Jews since 1948, pushing the 2-year total, okay, the 2 years of the war since Gaza began, to above 500,000 Jews who have left Israel. And we covered this at the Cradle that this past week, that the Netanyahu government has slapped a travel ban on Jewish dual nationals to stem this
They even
tide.
canceled evacuation flights.
They canceled evacuation flights. They kept people hostages there. You saw what happened. A lot of Israeli Jews got on boats. They got on boats and sailed to wherever they could, Cyprus, and then a bunch of Israelis tried to cross into the Egyptian border. Here, for our Egyptian friend watching, Sisi wouldn't allow the what is it, the Gaza flotilla, not flotilla, the Gaza aid to come into Gaza, but they took in Israeli refugees looking for refuge from Iran's missiles. Stunning, actually. But Israel's also now. So the main thing about Jews leaving is they have been able to live under a perception, an umbrella of security for decades and decades. That umbrella, that perception is completely shattered now. Not only that, so is Israel's economy. Israel's finance ministry is now staring at a public debt that has gone past 75% of GDP. It's begging for extra money in defense cash. It's slashing money to hospitals and schools while it's raising money for the Haredim Jews. Okay, I think $100 million went to them, extra was allocated to them this week, which really upset, secular
Who are
Israelis.
refusing to serve, are refusing conscription orders, and they make up about 18% of the military age adults in Israel. Before I let you go on, I want to remind everyone, please make sure to like our transmission. This is to help with the algorithm so more people can see. We also want to thank, we have I saw another donation from Marcio Santana. Thank you so much for your donation. Thank you for everyone who's in the chat right now. Make sure to subscribe, to share, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. The Cradle is on. We are breaking down what happened over the past week. I want to ask you guys, because the other big question, thank you to Ross, I don't know how to pronounce that, for another donation. Another question, since the ceasefire, is how bad was the damage inside Iran? Because as you said, Charmaine, this operation is launched with a lot of sabotage, with a lot of sabotage, internal drone attacks. Israel tipping its hand really inside Iran, right, by like activating so many sleeper cells that are still to this day still being dismantled. But my question is, as far as you guys know and what you have seen, how bad were the damage? Was the damage inside Iran, and militarily, and also like in other terms?
Yeah, of course, there are many, and if we're talking militarily, there's of course significant damages, especially for their radars and for air defenses. And if we're speaking in terms of the nuclear facilities, of course, we all know what happened to the nuclear facilities. There's at least three that were bombed by the United States, and the others were being bombed by Israel on a daily basis. And of course, but I said at the beginning of the war, if Israel didn't win, and it didn't, it will be very difficult for Israel to replicate what it did, because now it's very difficult for Israel to recruit spies or traitors, because now everybody is afraid to be a traitor, even if he is a traitor. You know
Because
what I
they're being
mean?
caught and they're
Yeah.
going to be
Just
executed.
today,
They're
yes,
being harmed,
just
yeah.
yeah, just today,
And
I read that.
how much is Israel paying these guys? We've heard like $250.
Go
Yeah.
ahead, Karim.
Seriously, is it worth it to die?
Look, I am Lebanese, and I know people. Unfortunately, there's people in Lebanon that are willing to help or aid Israel even for free. So the propaganda and the perspective of people are so different from like people that really love their country and know what's the meaning to be, a national
Patriotic.
and patriotic. Yeah. So I think it will be very difficult. Just today, I read in the Iranian media that they caught around 10,000 micro drones and 700 spies or collaborators with Israel, and this will be very difficult to replicate. And I think the Israelis did this; they wanted to finish the missile capabilities, all the nuclear facilities, and to really make Iran like go back more than 10 years. But they failed. I think they failed. To be honest, I expected more missiles to rain on
I
Israel,
heard I
but
heard that a lot of their launchers were damaged, and they were actually trying to protect their most modern ones,
yeah,
and that's why they.
100%. But also, I believe Sayyid Hassan, when he said that launchers are not that sophisticated or expensive, they can replicate it. I think I want to continue. I think I wanted to end by saying the real loss for me to Iran is the scientists. You can get
Yeah, yeah.
1,000 to whatever, thousands of missiles, thousands of launchers, facilities. They can be rebuilt, but the scientist is really the biggest thing that was lost in this war.
I want to say, not to minimize at all the scientists who were killed.
The human cost, yeah.
Just
Yeah,
also, yeah, sure, we have to tell them that there's also some scientists were already retired. Yani, as if Israelis, they took revenge of them. Many scientists that were assassinated were not even active in the program. They retired years ago, even though Israel killed them.
just to point out something, I don't know what this means, but it says Ursula Coffey is a Cradle fan now. Would that mean that she's become a monthly donor to
A
our
member of the
YouTube?
channel, a member of the
So
channel. So to everyone watching, be like Ursula Coffee, become a member of the channel.
no, but does that mean she's become a monthly donor?
Yes, that's what it means to become a member.
That's fantastic, Ursula. You're our very first. I'm so excited.
Yes, keep subscribing, keep leaving likes. Don't forget, guys. Go
And
ahead.
of course,
Sherman.
it's our first time, so so we are sorry, we're not like maybe we're
We're
able
doing great.
to read everything. I have 103 messages that I haven't read, and I
We'll
am
try to get us into as many of them as we
okay.
can.
Yeah, and okay, so regarding the
The
nuclear
scientists.
scientists, we don't know. Do we know a number of how many were killed? Is
It
it
was like over
sort
a
of
dozen, right? For
Yeah,
sure, it was
I
around
read
15.
between 12 and 16. That's what I read the
okay?
last time.
Okay, so what I want to say is, we reported on this after our trip to Tehran for the international media. event with foreign journalists, etc. Karim and I talked about how we'd learned when we visited the Tehran nuclear reactor that there are now 200 nuclear medicine facilities across Iran, and you can bet your bottom dollar. I mean, that's a nuclear medicine facilities, which means within them you have many, nuclear medicine doctors. In the same way, nuclear science will have been heavily invested in by the Iranian government. Especially, it's been a few years now that they've accused the IAEA of providing information on their nuclear scientists to Israel, to Iran's enemies. So they will have invested. Iran's quite remarkable that way. When they have a shortage of professionals in an area, they divert education ministry resources to identify people who would be good in this field, and then direct them into the field, fund them, scholarships, that kind of thing. So I don't think there's going to be a lack of Iranian nuclear scientists. To your point about, Trump hitting these nuclear facilities, obviously Israel's hits on the facilities didn't do any substantial damage because they needed the U.S. bunker buster bombs. Bloomberg reports that the U.S. Army, when attacking the nuclear center in Iran's Isfahan, deliberately did not strike buildings with research reactors. Now, I imagine that is for safety purposes as well. I think that would, get the ire of nations around the world, because the nuclear facility is supposed to be off limits because of the massive radioactive damage, and that could result. So when people are now saying that, oh, Iran gave them notice about hitting CENTCOM's Al Udeid base in Qatar, I can assure you that the Americans also provided not only Iran with notice, but orchestrated and choreographed the strikes in such a way that they wouldn't hit the actual research reactor facilities, but just superficial damage. And now, of course, the IAEA Director General, the awful Argentinian Rafael Grossi, is demanding.
Colin Powell, I call him.
Yeah, well, I think Colin Powell was not as nefarious, for sure. I think he was duped rather, but this guy is something else. I mean, the Iranians, just before the Israeli strikes, or around the same time, released documents that they had infiltrated of Grossi's dealings with the Israelis directly, when the IAEA claimed they hadn't had any direct dealings with them. And the Iranians have said, look, you're giving our nuclear scientists names to the Israelis. Now the IAEA, and we will have a report on this next week, has a system that they bought in around the time of the JCPOA, the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, right? They bought into a Palantir. Okay, we know Palantir,
yes.
like nefarious, software company.
End of the world company, yes.
Yeah, that basically, does, under the guise of counterterrorism, gets data on everyone and everything. So Palantir has a system called Mosaic that has been now approved, well, back in, I think, 2015 or so. The IAEA bought into at a huge cost of $41 million, which I think is bigger than the IAEA's entire annual budget. They took this on, and this software, ultimately being created by a firm that does counterterrorism, instead of gathering real data, it simulates threat, which is very likely why the IAEA's recent Board of Governors vote and report, right, came in looking at there being a new threat in Iran where there clearly wasn't. Okay, it's because of the Mosaic software that the IAEA's purchased. And Grossi wants to go to Iran. Grossi is saying, no, we have to come in immediately and inspect the damage at the nuclear facilities. No, you don't. By the way, so, the Iranian parliament did a vote, during the war, that
it was a Monday, the vote.
To drop out of the NPT. And today, I think the Guardian Council of Iran approved a draft bill to suspend cooperation with the IAEA. This from Iranian media reports. So
Remember
I don't,
yesterday?
and Lavrov, by the way, just to finish,
Yes,
I promise.
exactly. Yes, yes.
Lavrov said, "Oh, you want to finish that thought? Go ahead."
That was exactly what I was going to say. That Lavrov yesterday said that there's no safeguards for to make sure that the IAEA is not leaking secrets. Although today the Kremlin has said that they want Iran and the IAEA to cooperate. So a bit of mixed messaging there. But it is true, you know. Like yeah, I think it was yesterday that the Israelis said, or Trump said that they send a commando landing unit to Fordow to after the attacks. To me, it feels more like it's the IAEA inspectors are actually, you know, the commando unit. I'm checking to see if Pete Hegseth has started his press conference. I cannot find anything. He was due to speak and
Yeah,
defend
is
the
he gonna
strikes.
is he gonna say anything that's not
He's gonna say we
hateful?
destroyed it, and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
President Trump is correct. You know what? Let's talk a bit about the big news overnight. Donald Trump's very long message in which he calls Bibi Netanyahu the great hero of Israel, and we must defend them. And the U.S. saves Israel, now we must save Bibi. Stop this witch hunt. Because Netanyahu is currently facing multiple trials on corruption, graft, etc., you name it. The man is, you know, facing jail time. And now you have the US president
Mhm.
going out and publicly calling for the courts to drop their cases against this prime minister, right? Is this the deal? Is this the deal? Because at the same time, we're hearing about like the possibility of finally a ceasefire in Gaza, where the massacres have not stopped for one moment. You know, an average 100 Palestinians killed every day, many of them at the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites, where they are being trapped by snipers, by ISIS aligned gangs, by tanks, by, you know, ships firing from the sea. They are getting bombed from every side, just trying to get food. Is this part of the deal that Trump came with Netanyahu? You know, stop the war in Iran,
Well,
or we'll come in and then we'll help you with your cases.
I have a theory. I think
Go
Trump
ahead.
told him, "Let's stop the war now. It's time to stop the war in Gaza." And Bibi told him, "I can't." He told him why. He told him, "If I stop it, I will go to the jail." He told him, "Why would you go to the jail?" So
Oh my
I
God, he
think
was not aware.
we've been reporting about this since like 2 3 years at the cradle,
Yeah,
and
and
Trump just
Trump has
knew
sympathy.
yesterday.
Trump has sympathy to people who face lawsuits endlessly, right? Because he's been through it himself.
Yeah, this shows us and this proves for us that what we say is correct. Trump is really ignorant in politics or in international politics. Just I think he knew about this the moment he wrote the message. So
He just found out, you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
it's clear. It's
I
clear. He
don't.
was shocked. Oh, you might go to jail. Okay, let's finish
Why?
the job, and please, Israelis, don't get him to jail.
So
What's your take?
I don't know how successful this will be because just as many, you know, there are probably actually fewer Israelis who are thanking the U.S. and America for doing their job because basically Israel's reeling from the damage done and the aftermath. You know, and I think many are really upset that the U.S. didn't finish a job. They didn't finish Iran. They didn't, you know, there's no regime change. Iran obviously has its most advanced missiles tucked away. It has all its enriched uranium tucked away somewhere. So those people are like, you know, you did nothing for us. You did a staged attack that did nothing. And so take your advice and stuff it. And of course, people in Israel are angry at Netanyahu, possibly more than before, because this is a case where they feel a loss. They tangibly feel a loss. You can see this from whether you go to like the more right wing publications or the left wing publications in Israel. They're lamenting, they're not cheering, you know. So I think on Trump's post, several things. Most of our watchers will, you know, have seen Trump's posts as something to be wary of. He's lying. It's a feint. It's a deception. Don't be fooled by his animosity with Netanyahu. They're really good friends behind the scene. This is a setup, right? But on this one, you're believing it absolutely. Don't do that. Okay. Um, I think there's several things. One, Trump, like many people, realize that maybe they can extricate themselves from Israel's war and paying the bills for it and being drawn into Israel's wars by getting rid of just one person, Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay. In which case, Trump could be feigning support for him, okay, in order behind the scenes to make this happen. The second thing, which is possibly most likely, is that there's a direct, there's a deal that was made, as Karim and you suggested, which is, you know, I'll stop if I don't have, if there are no political ramifications for me, which, by the way, could mean the end of court cases, but it will also be accompanied by the end of Netanyahu as prime minister. I say this because for quite some time now, certainly since the war in Gaza began, there are major Israeli opposition figures who have offered Netanyahu political, not asylum, but a political deal, okay, to basically have immunity if he quits, okay, if he quits the war in
Exactly.
Gaza, which means his government collapses. So this is a continuation. Those opposition elements in Israel have huge political clout in Washington. These are deep staters who've been around forever and have very good relations with Republicans and Democrats and permanent, members of the security state in the United States. So this could be an opportunity for Trump to help stop these cases, which is what the opposition in Israel has offered in order to get Netanyahu off his throne. Because I'll tell you what, if Netanyahu stays, when Trump says, I'm not saying the ceasefire is permanent, it could start again, and maybe even soon, he knows that Netanyahu will not stop wars. He knows that at this point. He's seen what's happened with the Gaza ceasefire, with the Lebanon ceasefire, and how Netanyahu pushed ahead with, promising that he would neuter Iran in just a few days, and that didn't happen. And the Israelis started bleeding militarily, economically, in terms of their key infrastructure, and that the U.S. actually had to come in and do like an orchestrated strike in order to save Netanyahu's ass. So read Trump's long tweet or post, keeping both those things in mind.
Guys, remember, leave a like, share our videos, subscribe to our channel, and more importantly, check out our memberships or check out our Patreon. We need your support. Karim, you're getting so many invitations in the chat. You're getting invited left and right. Come visit my village. Come to India. I want to meet you in person. We have
Can
a
I
true.
can
Go
I
ahead.
ask? Are you guys reading every
I'm
thing? Because
trying.
I feel like
We're trying. We have.
we're missing calling out. Oh, Marcio Santana became a Cradle fan, a monthly subscriber. Thank you so much. I just want to make sure we're calling out people who are donating and getting in some good questions as well.
We
So
are.
this is
We
where
are scanning. Yeah.
okay, this is where I'm depending on Esteban to do it. Esteban's depending on Karim to do it. Karim's depending on me to do it. If
You
we
know,
miss anyone, please
It's
forgive
yeah,
us.
it's our first
teamwork.
time. Yeah,
Teamwork
we're
makes the
trying our
dream work.
best.
I wanna
I,
now. I wanna ask you guys, okay? Because this is something interesting too to think about. Who was impressed by the U.S.-Israeli war, by this 12-day war? It was any actor in the world really impressed by what we saw? Was China shaking in his boots? Was Yemen concerned about what they were seeing? Who was truly impressed? Was anyone or was no one? What do you think, Karim?
Yeah, I think of course the Israelis themselves were impressed.
Do you think they were impressed?
Yeah, they
I
were
don't know, man.
the missiles, of course, man.
There were millions of them in shelters.
Yeah, they were impressed from the missiles. Yeah, and we have to know that the West and Israelis, and of course behind them the United States, they have like a high self-esteem of their weapons and defensive system. They didn't. I don't think they were expected this. They were maybe expected. For instance, one or two missiles to land because, according to them and to their studies, usually their defense system, their multi-layered defense system, which consists of four defense systems. We have David Sling, we have the Arrow, Arrow 1, Arrow 2, we have
Arrow
Iron
3.
Dome, which is nothing for this for the Iron missiles, and we have David Sling. I don't know if I say it, and of course we should not forget the other layers, which is outside Israel. We have the
US
Navy,
ships.
U.S.
Yeah.
Navy in the Gulf, in the Red Sea, and in the Mediterranean Sea. they are all trying to intercept. And just today, officially, France said that they were intercepting drones and missiles, or trying to intercept drones and missiles. And of course, the UK said before, Germany, even Italians in their media, they said it. So let's
Mhm. Yeah,
put this
France also
aside.
confirmed. Yeah.
And so that's why they were expecting up to 90% interception. And we saw that, I think the last day, Iran fired two missiles and one landed. And some sources said two landed, which is either 50 or 100% the rate. And the day
Okay.
before, the Israelis said it was 67%. So for them, they were expecting 90% of interceptions, and now they are seeing that around 70% to 60% are landing. It's a huge disaster for them. So they didn't calculate it as they expected, and we saw what happened till now. To be honest, nobody thought or can comprehend what happened. Is that we saw that the United States bombed Iran, and then we saw that Iran bombed Qatar, of course, US based in Qatar. And after like few hours, we saw Trump is shouting at Netanyahu and at Israel to stop, and suddenly the war stopped. And it's what happens is very weird. Usually, what happened usually, if you go back to history, maybe after 2 years of fighting, this will happen. What we saw was only accomplished in 12 days, which is insane, which is tell us nobody wants to fight. Everybody saw that the missiles, Iranian missiles, are lethal. And I don't think the United States want to see any of these missiles, for instance, landing not on a base, even on a
On a
ship.
ship. Yeah. Let me interject quickly. We have the statements from Hexet. He spoke. What did he say? He condemned the media. I hope with all the ink spilled, all of your outlets find the time to properly recognize this historic change in continental security that other presidents tried to do, other presidents talked about. President Trump accomplished it. It's a huge deal. Uh, Defending the attacks. One question we have here, Charmin, and this is a bit of a tangent. How do we get the mug? I am a subscriber, but nowhere to
I
increase
was just
donation.
looking at that. So, participant FN Janjua 72 is asking, how do we get the mug? We are going to have, I mean, this really depends on Kareem, okay? We are going to
As many
have,
things do.
yeah, as many things do. We're going to have is it Shopify, right? We've already been working on it for the past month and a half, and in the finalization process now. And there will be mugs, and there will be T-shirts, and there will be sweatshirts, and there will be caps, because
Little
we know our
stickers
dear
too.
Esteban and Karim love caps. So, and we have a tote bag, and then we will have. So you won't just see just the Cradles logo, but we're going to have special editions that have like, messaging about, dude, it's West Asia, stupid. Okay, maybe not that one. I think we nixed that one, but things like
cool.
that will come on periodically. And in the next weeks, we will have a landing page. So if you go to any donate section on our site, and we'll also have some banner ads on the Cradle site, and through our social media, anytime you see that, you click on it, you'll be directed directly to our Shopify page. And by all means, send us messages. Let us know what kind of products you'd like to see, if you don't want just sweatshirts and
Yeah.
T-shirts and mugs,
To answer the second part of the question, they said nowhere to increase donation. You can always check out our Patreon page. It should be linked below.
Or if they want to donate directly, if they can click the support us on our website. It's an internal payment, yani. There's no third party.
So
Yeah, and
go to
there's
thecradle.co.
Patrick says Kareem is a mug.
Is a mug? Okay.
You are a mug.
Ooh, Patrick, we love Kareem.
MJ asks, "Do you?" He says, "I think Trump will get the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, he is getting nominated for it now, but by Pakistan and now by by a congressman, right? Like he wants what Obama got, essentially. No.
Oh, and by the way, U.S. intelligence agencies believe Pakistan is developing an ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, capable of hitting mainland America. This is something else that has massively changed. You know how I talked about earlier how Arab states, and particularly Persian Gulf states, are recalibrating and recalculating, realizing that they don't want Iran to lose this war and they don't want Israel to win this war. In this war, we saw Pakistan make a quantum leap in potentially where it views its future. It came down so hard on Iran's side in this, and even reportedly did some early, provided some early defense materials. But I also want to talk about like the general fog of war, the obfuscation of facts, the seeding of
Hmm.
fake narratives, false narratives. These are all part of the psychology of warfare. The fog of war is super, super important to many parties. Okay. So the Iranians have shown the damage. All right. The Iranians have shown I think, 36, have announced the 36 military, senior military personnel who were killed. They've identified them by name and rank. And the Israelis have tried to um, obfuscate everything possible. And one of the things that's happening besides the censorship by the American and Israeli side is the spinning of absolutely false narratives. Very early on in this conflict, one of these narratives, which is still not considered false, but I think we really have to hash it out here. I mean, where else are you going to do it if not a Cradle podcast, right? Is the narrative that the Israelis had full aerial control over Iran. It is a narrative that the Americans repeated and Western media repeated. Was this true? Now, there is not any proof whatsoever that planes, Israeli military jets, significantly even overflew Iran at any time. Okay. When you say you have air superiority, it doesn't mean that your planes can fly above and their planes can't, the national flight Air Force can't. It means that uh, Iran wouldn't even be able to put its planes in the air because the Israelis would be able to attack any part of that airspace at any time. We know that there was a more open Israeli air corridor into Western Iran, which is, Tehran lies slightly north and slightly west of the country. Um, but there is no indication that that kind of corridor was open to any other parts of the country. And anytime Israel struck something in the east or center, which was much more infrequent in this war, it was mostly Western targets. That it was kind of like one-offs. It was not a
Hmm.
frequent occurrence because they didn't have a pathway into these places.
Actually, Karim, do you think we can put the images we have? Because we have those two images. I sent them to the chat of the attacks in Israel and the attacks in Iran to illustrate better
Okay.
Charmin's point.
This is a new thing. Karim, are we able to do this? Are we able to share images? If not this time, we will next time.
No, I think we can. I think we can.
Is
Because
it
you're
up
right.
there?
You're right, Charmin. There is a limited range to the Israeli attacks, right?
Yeah. And then the other thing, well, there's several points here. The
Hmm.
Iranians claim to have struck down three or four. Okay, these are just media reports from sources in Iran. Um, Three or four Israeli operated F-35 jets, right? The U.S.'s state-of-the-art fighter jet. Um, and then here's the thing: the first one was reported very, very early on in the conflict, right? And it may be that Israel tried that and then got a jet taken down and then decided not to risk anything further. Okay. Because Iran has not shown any actual pictures of that fighter jet or the pilot it claims or the Iranian media claims it captured. Um, right. So that's one thing. They could have tried this early on, got thwarted, and thought, let's just not do this. And basically then used mostly their major drones. I mean, obviously their small drones, the thousands of small drones they had seeded throughout Iran, but also their major drones, of which they don't have a whole ton.
Hmm.
Um, there's an article we were reading, and I definitely want to point this out because it's one of the most interesting um, pieces I've seen by Simplicius76.substack.com. You can find it on his Substack, and it's worth reading. But he argues that there's not a single shred of proof that there were any Israeli jets in the air over Iran. That the most significant proof of this is that Israel, very, very, to great fanfare, would release footage of their strikes in Iran, right? So how come there's not a single clip from the footage that comes from fighter jet,
There we go.
right? How come every clip was from a drone, a sophisticated drone? That's somewhat telling, right?
Completely.
And when you see this footage, you can't, if you're just looking at the camera looking outward, you can't tell what this comes from. The Israelis could say, our fighter jets are everywhere. We're getting this footage. You can't tell that. The Israelis lie. We know that. There was one clip released this week which showed what was claimed to be a jet at night. This is the Israelis showed, right? At night, flying over an Iranian city and conducting strikes. But upon research, the city, the blogger says, turned out to be Bandar Abbas, which is the southernmost port city, flanking the Persian Gulf, which is also easily accessible if you can fly over the Persian Gulf. The other potential fighter jet paths was over the Caspian, because Israel has a corridor through
Yeah.
Azerbaijan.
Put the
Big.
map up again, Karim, so people can see what we're talking about.
Yeah, the Iranian map.
Yeah, and
The
then
Iranian map.
they say, so this blogger says that there were tanks dropped from Israeli planes recorded washing up on Iran's northernmost Caspian shores. So imagine from the Persian Gulf waters, you might have had one or two Israeli planes, some Israeli fighter jets. And then from the northernmost Caspian Sea, you might have had some. But again, these could suggest that the Israelis only fired missiles out from its fighter jets outside of Iran's borders, because there's just no footage. And yet we repeated ad nauseum that Israel had air superiority. I would argue that Iran had superiority, at least missile superiority, over Israel's airspace, because nothing could thwart these. That they're saying that 400, at least 400 of Iran's reported 550 missiles that were launched toward Israel landed. Okay, and in the end, um, who's going to have an easier time rebuilding, recalibrating? I think Israel's, should have stopped at Iran in the resistance axis. It got too bold. It has suffered a historic humiliation in the history of this 76 or 77-year-old state. Iran has learned very quickly from its mistakes. They were talking about, the NATO Secretary General was talking about Russia learning within 2 weeks of every new tactic that NATO was employing in Ukraine. Within 2 weeks, they were learning, and they were producing much more weaponry, much faster than NATO ever could hope to. Iran is, a partner of the Russians and the Chinese. They will have learned a lot more through the NATO war. They have done joint military exercises with the Russians, and have allegedly operated in the Ukraine theater and sent their drones into the Ukraine theater, on behalf of the Russians. I think Iran's going to learn very fast from these mistakes. We kind of know that this is how the Axis operates, because we would see in past wars with Israel how Hezbollah state, even Hamas, would learn and adapt very quickly in the field. So I think the few launchers, the Israelis claim the majority of Iranian launchers, but of course that's not the case. The few launchers that Iran lost during this war, and air defense systems that were destroyed, can be sort of reset relatively quickly. And if Iran, moves quickly to do some kind of military arrangement with the Russians and Chinese, because I think everyone knows that this is an unfinished war. This war is not finished. The Israelis will never feel safe until Iran's gone from the picture, and Iran refuses to bow. It just refuses to. And Khamenei's speech today said, it's laughable. He said to the Americans, it's laughable that you think a country with thousands of years of civilization would submit to your whims. So this is an unfinished war. This is only the major first round. But as I said last week, this is now a peer-to-peer conflict because the Americans stepped in, and so the world has changed.
We just saw the Iranian defense minister. He was in China for the SEO summit with the defense ministers, of course, of China, of Russia, of Belarus, a couple of other countries.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Sharmin, but I want to ask you guys, and I'll start with Karim. Is this the time when Iran has to rush towards the bomb? Is Iran now have to go towards the bomb, or do you think there's another option?
The point is that if it's not Iran, I would say yes, but knowing how they operate and their ideology, they will never rush towards a bomb, whatever happens. There's a fatwa, at least under the leadership of
Ali Khamenei.
Ali Khamenei, this will never happen.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
This
What do
mean
will
you think,
never
Sharmin?
happen.
that's a that's a fair assessment, to be honest. What's changed? I think Iran has seen that its ballistic missile arsenal is fully capable of striking its core regional enemy, like very, very hard. And don't forget, Iran did not use its advanced missiles because this is phase one, and this is for sure how the Iranians are thinking. And its missile arsenal is capable, it believes, of establishing a strong deterrence. So why would you need a nuclear weapon? Oh, hey, Lebanon's electricity went off as usual. So I think Karim's assessment is fair. Something would have to change. Something, um, there might be a interim solution in which Iran allows a third country to establish to base a few nuclear warheads some in Iran that could never ever be used without an Iranian okay. I mean, there's all kinds of scenarios, but I think Karim's assessment is essentially right. Something major has to change for Ali Khamenei to reverse his fatwa, and I don't think they will do it necessarily in secret because this is a big
Fatwa.
deal.
It's
Oh,
actually
Yeah.
it's a religious ban, essentially, right? It's a religious ban.
Yeah.
What is next for the Gulf countries? We're getting some questions here in the chat. What is next for the Gulf nations? Let's start with Karim. Karim, I know you have thoughts about the Arab leaders.
They will forever bow to the Americans.
100%. They always bow, but we saw them that they يعني, they used to only bow to Americans. Now they يعني, every now and then they bow to the Israelis sometimes and for the Iranians sometimes. Yani without doing only like this, now they do this, and this.
Okay.
That's what changed.
Is this
That-
gonna? But is this gonna
Why?
bring
Why,
repercussions with
Kenny? But
the?
why? Why would they do that? Why would they do
Okay,
that?
because-
They can see that American bases don't keep them more secure now, and that America can't do
It's not
anything.
only about security; it's
against-
about money.
But,
it's
the,
about
but,
money.
but the Gulf are paying the Americans, and the Americans are still not listening
Yeah,
to them.
because the United States allow them to make money.
Okay, I would argue that this is not the final nail in the coffin, but it is a series of nails in the coffin of U.S. being able to dictate in this region. This conflict showed that Iran is potentially a pure competitor of the United States is. Forget Israel, okay? And that really the only parties who can bring stability to the region, so Persian Gulf states can plod along with their economic plans, right? Their growth plans, is potentially a regionally devised security arrangement. And who better to usher that in, an era of regional based security of littoral states of the Persian Gulf and even further than the Russians and the Chinese. So I do believe that will happen. But another question I have to bring to you guys is, oh, and by the way, again, I said this twice now, but please do read our analysis from yesterday on why the Persian Gulf states are recalculating, and they've suddenly realized they don't want Iran to lose, maybe more than they don't want even Israel to win. So I think another important geopolitical or point that has geopolitical significance is when the Iranians hit Haifa, and they didn't disable the port completely as they could have, as the Israelis have shown they were willing to disable the Hodeidah port in Yemen with just no qualms. Okay, Iran still did a lot of messaging in this war. They didn't go all out. This is very clear, but they did hit Haifa, and they did shut down that port for a period of time, and they did hit Haifa's um, power station, which cut out electricity in the north of Israel for some time, right? And this this suggests, because don't forget the India Middle East
That
corridor.
was going to be my question. What's next for the
Esteban, today
IMEC?
we're just thinking alike. This corridor plan, which by the way hasn't even begun getting funded, okay? They talk about it all the time, but it hasn't even begun getting funded. We will have an article on that as soon as things calm down here and we can go back to the geopolitics stuff.
Mhm.
Um, it means that India is fully on board. India is not willing to fund it. This is what we know so far, at least. India already has INSTIC, the International North-South Transportation Corridor, with the Russians and the Iranians. It has the Chabahar port with the Iranians. Does it need this corridor? Okay, I think the corridor, the people who are backing the corridor, the Americans, the Israelis, and some Gulf nations want this way more than India. India has other means to get to Europe. Uh, but crippling the Haifa port, because this corridor ends at Haifa's port, and near Haifa is the only other functioning port in Israel, which is Ashdod. So one of these two ports are the only pathway to Europe from Israel.
Mhm.
Okay, what happens to the IMEC corridor now? If Iran can basically blow up a main part of the corridor, and may in fact be provoked to do that many times, because Israel never stops killing, right, and
Exactly.
striking. So
Exactly.
IMEC has taken, I think, IMEC may be off the table, even they do keep talking about it. Haifa was the transit hub. The whole purpose of all this was to get Israel into the corridors game and make Israel a major um, thoroughfare. Anyways, a transit hub
Uh-huh.
between Asia, Europe, and Africa, now completely failed due to the attacks on Haifa's infrastructure by Iran. I think the IMEC project is unachievable at this point.
Not only IMAC, I just want to make a quick comment. So,
Go
since
ahead.
years and since more than 20, 30 years, many Gulf countries and even Western companies, they say we invest in Israel, we want peace with Israel, blah, 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 because Israel is safe. Look what's happened to Syria, look what happened to Iraq, look what happened in there and that. So, the significant thing that happened since 7 October is that now even Israel is not safe. I just want to mention that because
Got.
usually they
Mhm.
made themselves as the gas hub, Haifa port. They wanted to be it to be an international port, and they wanted even to drill from Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea to bypass the Suez Canal, claiming that they are the most prosperous and they have the security and blah blah blah. But now this can be accomplished. Not only
Yeah.
IMAC, yani nothing can be accomplished
And,
currently.
and realize this, I think Mohammed Swaidan, our columnist who wrote about why the Arabs are reconsidering yesterday, pointed out that Israel has tried to position itself as the main gas hub to Jordan and to Egypt, even, that the supply lines were absolutely impacted during this war. Egypt and Jordan simply did not get energy resources from Israel during these 12 days. That is really significant.
It is. Again to remind the people watching, people connected right now, leave a like. Right now we have about 330 people connected, and we are at a deficiency of 100 likes. Let's get those likes up, please. Let's help the algorithm so we can reach more viewers.
Make me happy.
We have some questions in the chat about the Democratic candidate for the New York's mayoral election, Mamdani, I believe is his name. I have not followed him too closely. Uh, People are asking what is our opinion on the guy. I will go first. I think he's the next Alexandra Ocasio Cortez. I think he's, just a pretty face that will turn as quickly as he is able to, because I do not trust U.S. politicians. I trust them less than other politicians. But I know maybe you guys have a different take on this. Charmin, what do you think about Mandami? Do you think this is a sign of the changing of the times?
It is a sign of the changing of the times. I was so surprised today for a tweet from Bill Clinton congratulating him. I mean, he was like Bill Clinton, deep stater. What I want to say is, you know, that kind of overture by someone like Clinton is clearly now, the good cop way to try to impact and reshape, remold Mamdani to, to learn like AOC to, realize which,
To fall in line, to fall in line, right?
who's buttering her bread, etc. I want to say with all sincerity that politics is not easy. I mean, just being on this channel and having a point of view isn't easy because there'll always be another side or two or three that don't believe what you're saying, not believe, but they don't have the same point of view. So in politics, you do have to consider all your constituents. And, New York City is, I think it has 1 million Jewish Americans. It's not something that Mamdani is going to be able to ignore. And of course, they have huge clout in the various, I mean, in the financial sector, in the, which is very important for New York. It's its biggest industry, finance, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there just aren't enough bankers to outvote regular New York citizens or, residents who are many, many more millions. And I think his promise of delivering childcare and free childcare and free bus transportation to New York City residents, at a time where inflation is high and the cost of living in New York is ridiculous, basically to make New York City more affordable, because this ultimately is the platform which he was voted for. I think the fact that he stood up for Palestine during that debate that went viral, when the others were kowtowing to Israel so humiliatingly, actually set him apart from other politicians. Maybe even people who were not do or die on this issue, but they saw a brave man, they saw a brave politician. Any politician who comes in, though, is going to be affected by their various constituencies and the various people like Bill Clinton on the other side trying to appeal to him. Don't forget, Hillary Clinton has a massive political apparatus in New York because she was New York State Senator, right? Mm-hmm. So these are important things, and I don't think we should slam Mamdani for trading away some chips in order to get the chips that are most important to him, which is to make New York most affordable. By the way, his threats to arrest Netanyahu if he comes to New York City, I don't know how the law works in New York City. I don't know if New York City state law, what's it called? Like police law, right? Trump's,
like local law, you mean?
Local law trumps federal security forces. I don't know if that's the case, because I imagine if Netanyahu came in, let's say, to speak at the UN General Assembly, which is in New York City, come September, when the plenary sessions take place, he's very likely to be protected by Washington security forces. Sure. But I know in many other places, local authority does trump. I think it's a state-to-state basis, and they may change the law if the police get to trump federal security forces. They may change the law before Netanyahu comes here in September. Or comes
we have
September.
A very good comment. The subway tunnels in New York are now Hamas. There's people saying that there's going to be executions in Central Park and hangings. And you saw the image of the Statue of Liberty with the full covering as the traditional. Oh my God, this is what's happening in the United States. What a country! What a country! What a president, right? Guys, I think maybe we can start wrapping up. If there's anything else you wanna say before we say goodbye for today, and of course we want to thank everyone who has joined. I don't know. Do you have anything any final words for our first live?
I want to say that, Karim, I bet this wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be. I've done a few lives. It does make me nervous, but I think we're among our own and we know each other's points of view, and um, we follow the same stories all day long. Like, this was actually um, very comfortable, I feel. And to me, it was really nice to get immediate feedback from our viewers. And of course, I know that it's not just the live viewers who get to see this, but people afterward.
Yeah, everybody.
I would
Everybody can
say
do.
that the benefit of having it pre-recorded is we get to insert graphics, but I think, Karim, that's just something we can learn actually, and quite fast,
I
because I
did,
think it's a
Charmaine.
value add. Yeah, yeah, you did the one, but I mean, like, no, no, no. But I mean,
No
we
pressure.
can, and maybe all of us will have the ability. I don't know. We have
Yeah,
to figure this
hopefully,
out
hopefully moving
to
forward.
put on things that we'd like to see. The other things I would like to ask our viewers is, y'all have talked in the past or suggested in the past that we do an interview show, and it's something we'd like to do with your donations. Of course, we do need that
Please,
help to move on to
please.
another level of YouTube content. Is who would you like us to interview? Now, I have to say, from my personal opinion, is I do not want to interview the same wonderful, by the way, talking heads, people, and experts who appear on pretty much all the platforms that have a different point of view on
Alternative
regional
media, yeah.
geopolitics. Yeah, I just I just don't want to do that. We hear from them all the time. Some of them are great, and I think we will have them. For instance, Pepe Escobar is a columnist of the Cradle. Of course, we will have him on. But I think I'm looking for the unsung experts, the ones who
Yeah.
everybody in your country, in your geography, in your sort of milieu, your community know very well, and would say, "My God, this guy is the best on India Pakistan. This guy is the best on U.S. foreign policy in the GCC. This person knows Egypt inside out." They do have to speak English pretty fluently, but I think that's the only consideration. We're looking for some brilliant geopolitical minds who are calling out things that others are not repeating. I mean, I don't want to hear myself, on 16 different podcasts during a week. I don't. So why would we want to hear those same fantastic yet frequently, appearing the same people? So please give us your suggestions.
Someone
And we
suggested
got
Julian
another two
Assange.
dollars from Stronger. I can't read it; it just went off the screen. Can you guys see who just gave us a
يلا.
donation?
Who was it, Karim? Who was it? Let us know.
If we didn't
Vijay
mention your name
Prashad,
during the podcast, we're gonna do a comment in our on
Jeremy
the
Corbyn, Julian Assange, Vijay Prashad. Some of the suggestions. I think we'll see.
Jeremy Corbyn.
We'll see
Jeremy
who we can book.
Corbyn.
Yeah, maybe, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
VJ
totally can.
Prashad, we don't see a lot, that's for sure. Pierce Morgan.
Piers Morgan. I think he's on media enough. Thank you very much. Well, guys, it has been an absolute pleasure. It has been, this is something I have been pushing for a long time, and I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we ripped off the band-aid, and I know we're gonna continue to get better at this. And I can see, we have so many comments and
Yeah,
everybody
I'm so
giving.
sorry. I tried my best, wallah.
No, 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 nothing to be sorry about, man. We are so glad for all of everyone who joined today. Make sure again to share this video, to subscribe to our channel, to leave a like. Please leave those likes; they really do help with the algorithm. Tell everyone you know. Tell anyone who might be interested. The Cradle is going live. We're gonna continue to do this on Thursday mornings, and hopefully thanks to your support, to your growing support, we'll continue to expand. Make sure to find us on our social media platforms, and again, check out our Patreon, check out the memberships, the super chats, everything that you can do to help the Cradle. It's welcome. We appreciate it, and we ask for your support. With that being said, we'll see you next week. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I have been joined by Sharmin Arwani and Karim Shami.